Welcome to Lady E's Dark Tales. Have you ever felt the prickling sensation of being watched, only to realise too late that someone was tracking your every move? Tonight's story takes us to a quiet, 24-hour gas station on Route 43, where an ordinary night shift turns into a waking nightmare. A lone employee, a stranger with chilling intentions, and a sinister plan set in motion long before she ever noticed. Dim the lights, lock your doors, and stay close to the screen, because this terrifying true encounter will make you rethink those late-night routines. This is a story I call The Night Shift.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining tonight's stream. I've worked the overnight shift at the 24-hour gas station on Route 43 for almost 2 years now. It's usually a quiet job, mostly truckers, third-shift factory workers, and the occasional group of teenagers grabbing snacks on their way home from a party. I've dealt with my share of drunk customers and attempted shoplifters, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what happened last Tuesday night. It was around 3:15 a.m., that dead zone between the bar closings and the early morning commuters. I was restocking the coffee station when the bell above the door chimed. I glanced up to see a man in his mid-40s walk in. He was wearing a wrinkled button-up shirt and khakis like he'd been in them all day. Nothing unusual about him except for the intensity in his eyes. The kind of focused stare that makes the hair on your neck stand up. You know that feeling, right? I remember giving him my standard evening greeting, and he just nodded slightly and walked to the back of the store where the refrigerated drinks are kept. No verbal response. Nothing. I continued with the coffee supplies, but kept him in my peripheral vision. There was something about him that set off alarm bells in my head. He wasn't browsing like a normal customer. He was moving methodically, scanning the store, checking corners, looking at the ceiling. I realized he was looking for cameras. Paranormal Pro asks, "Did you have any warning signs before he approached you?" That's the thing. I had this gut feeling, but nothing concrete until he came up to the counter. When he approached, he wasn't carrying anything to purchase. He placed both hands flat on the counter and leaned forward, and I remember him asking if I was all alone. My throat went dry. I lied and told him my manager was in the back. I asked if I could help him with something, trying to sound normal. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then he told me he'd been watching the place for 3 nights. He knew it was always just me, from midnight until 6. I felt my heart hammering against my ribs. My phone was in my pocket, but I couldn't reach for it without him noticing. The panic button was under the counter, but it was a good 8 inches from where my hands were resting on the register. I tried to keep my voice steady, asking if he wanted to buy something, but he just continued as if I hadn't spoken. He told me he liked my routine, how I take my break at 4 a.m. and go out back to smoke. No cameras in that blind spot by the dumpsters, he said. Then he tilted his head and said it was a smart place to grab someone. No witnesses that time of night. Night Owl 87 in the chat just said, "That's absolutely terrifying. What did you do?" My legs felt weak. I started inching my hand toward the panic button. He noticed right away and told me not to. Then he said we were going to take a little walk out back in about 40 minutes during my break time. He warned me not to hit that button, and then, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, showing me the screen. I remember thinking, who is this man? And what was he planning to do to me? He swiped away from the picture of me on his phone to another image. I felt my heart stop. It was a photo of my apartment building. My specific window, with the blue curtains my mom had made. He knew my name from my name tag, and he knew I lived alone. I remember thinking, how long had he been stalking me? How many nights had he watched me before this one? At that moment, headlights swept across the front windows as a semi-truck pulled into the lot. The man's eyes darted toward the door, then back to me. He whispered to me not to say a word, and that he'd be back at 4. Told me to be smart about this. He turned and walked calmly toward the chip aisle as the truck driver entered. The driver was a regular named Mike, and I must have looked as terrified as I felt, because Mike immediately asked if I was okay. Before I could answer, the man emerged from the aisle with a bag of chips and a soda, paid quickly, and left. As soon as the door closed behind him, I collapsed against the counter and told Mike everything. Mike called the police while I pulled up the security footage. Officers arrived within minutes and found the man sitting in a sedan in the back corner of the parking lot. When they searched his car, they found rope, duct tape, a hunting knife, and printouts of my Facebook photos and work schedule. The detective later told me he'd been released from prison 6 months ago after serving 12 years for kidnapping and assault. I was going to be his first victim since getting out. I don't work night shifts anymore. I still have nightmares about those eyes, about what would have happened if Mike hadn't pulled in when he did. Sometimes I wonder how long he had been watching me, learning my patterns, waiting for the perfect moment. The scariest part isn't that he was planning to take me. It's that I can't help but wonder how many others have stood in that store, watching me, calculating, planning. How many others considered doing exactly what he planned? He was just the first one I actually noticed. Well, that's my story. I'm still dealing with it, you know? Please, everyone watching, be aware of your surroundings. Notice patterns, trust your instincts, and stay safe out there. If you've experienced something similar or had a close call like mine, drop it in the comments below. I'd like to know I'm not alone in this. Anyways, thanks for listening tonight.
And so, my beloved audience, we have reached the end of this harrowing story. A routine job, an unshakable stare, and a plan that could have ended in unspeakable horror. Just how many of us are being watched without realizing it? How many predators lurk in the places we consider safe? Have you ever experienced an encounter that left you questioning your own security? Share your stories in the comments below, and if this tale of survival sent chills down your spine, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more terrifying encounters. Until next time, sweet screams, my darlings. And remember, the routines that comfort you may be the very patterns that expose you to those watching from the shadows.